You know what, Jim Cuddy, you have the best voice in Canada, best male voice. You really have a wonderful voice. And I wanted to say that Greg's solos are, you know, he should listen to this because I didn't have a chance to tell him. He should listen to this because I find his solos are so good, so unorthodox, so fresh. Yeah. And also, a lot of people who just watch bands, listen to bands, they never think of looking at the rhythm section or the bass player. You're a wonderful bass player. And anybody who knows anything about music can hear you, you know? And when I saw you today in your sound check, it's like those little things you do, you know? And you're very calm and subtle, you don't say nothing, but you're there and you're anchoring the band, you know?
You know, I think one of the advantages, like in a lot of bands that can stay together a long time, everybody does a lot more than what is apparent on stage. Like Basil does a lot more than play bass. He plays guitar and knows a lot about music. And I think you always have to draw on all those different reservoirs to find different ways to, I don't know, just to find some kind of different character to each record. And that's a big part, I think, of surviving. You reach a point where you've done what the band can do, and you start sounding like yourself again. And then you got to get everybody to pitch in and do something different. So I think it's a truism in bands. Often you find the bass player is the most, I mean, you know, blow smoke up.
And you know, and it's true,
but
is the public doesn't realize.
Of the band,
it's true,
you know?
And the public doesn't realize that that's the anchor of the band, you know. And what I want to know is, you guys been friends for like 12 years, the three of you. Have you known each other? No, that's what I want to know, that if you are friends, like when you're off and you're not working, you like phone each other, hey, you want to go for a beer or coffee? Like, how do you keep that going after so long? You work together, and I mean, when you're on the road 24 hours a day, you know.
We don't, you know, make a point of socializing when we're at home, but, you know, if I'm out and I see somebody, it's always nice to see them, you know. We spend so much time together when we're working that...
That's enough of that.
Yeah, when we get home, it's like, yeah, okay,
see you
when we start up again, you know?
I know sometimes I get off the road, I go, I'm sick of the band. I don't know if you guys are like that.
But you like going out with your parents all the time.
It's true.
Oh, please.
Okay, so speaking about being close, how do you guys do your harmonies are so close? It's almost like you guys are a family. Your harmonies are so tight, they're intertwined. You know, if you hear you and Greg singing, your harmonies, you don't know where it begins and where it ends. I don't know how to explain that. Can you explain that?
I don't know that that's a very, you know, other than it's sort of a fluke. I think that, you know, because Greg and I were not the two people in high school that were destined to be...
You guys knew each other in high school?
Yeah, destined to be a harmonizing, songwriting duo. It would have seemed
the Lennon
bizarre.
McCartney of Ontario.
It just would have seemed ridiculous. I mean, but you just sort of grow so accustomed to each other's voices, and you learn how to match them. And I guess also the opportunity to do a lot of recording so that you can really hear what each other is doing.
All of his army is here to stay. All of his army are on their way. And I would rather be anywhere else than here today.
Do you have a thing for Montreal?
I used to live in Montreal.
That's why.
I used to live in Montreal. Greg used to live in Montreal. But I think that also Montreal is a very unique place.
Because on Casino, you have a song called Montreal. And now you have Brother Andre's Heart on Tremolo that I am so in love with.
Cool.
And so who wrote Montreal on Casino, and who wrote Brother Andre's Heart?
I wrote Montreal, and Greg wrote Brother Andre's Heart. Because Greg grew up the Catholic in Montreal.
So I'm Catholic, so now I'm a big fan.
So he has the experience of going to the oratory and doing the prayers up the steps and being all hallucinatory by the time he got there.
It's really deep, I find, you know. Maybe because I'm Catholic, I'm not sure. But I find it deep, you know.
I find it interesting when Greg tells those stories, too. I was a Protestant, Montreal West.
Us interviews over.
Anglophone. So I don't, all that, the ecstasy of the Catholic service is not something so I just hear stories from Greg. It all sounds like some kind of... they're trying to put you in some state of mind that you're so open to this. And then that song has a fairly bizarre narrative.
Don't hide your smile. Don't hide your smile. Your beautiful smile.
I must confess, I'm a fan since 5 Days in May. My husband's been a fan since, you know, the
You're
7
a fan
albums.
of Blue Rodeo B.
That's probably because I like that kind of folky sound you guys have, you know. I'm sorry, but that's the truth.
No, I think that's fine. You know, I think that was a good thing for us. That 5 Days in July was a very simple project. Just was meant to be a little back porch performance.
A lot of
And
heart, that's why.
Well, and also good players. You know, that was a chance for the band to play, and it gives us sort of two benchmarks in our career. You know?
That's awesome,
People
though.
don't say, "I like your first record back." I mean,
Yeah.
how long can you live with that?
Yeah,
I
see,
like to write another song and try.
that's
I'm
the first time
trying.
I heard Blue Rodeo myself. It was,
Yeah.
And I went, who's this guy with this wicked voice? And then I found out it was Blue Rodeo. But you know, 5 Days in May, for all the people, I'm going to ask Baz this because he's like, oh, okay, I want to get this over with.
Fall asleep.
I'm going to ask this because 5 Days in May, anybody who had never heard of Blue Rodeo, rock stations, country stations, he's listening, everybody was playing this album. And people who had never heard of you guys who weren't fans at the beginning, this album blew it wide open because people just went, whoa, this album was so good. It was phenomenal for you guys.
Yeah, that took us all by surprise, I think. You know, we made that. We went out to this farm, Greg's farm, to record, and just do some recording, some songs, and have a vacation. You know, because Greg had a pool, and it was summertime. You know,
Case of beer.
yeah, that kind of thing, barbecue and whatever. And that record just kind of emerged out of that. And there was a general feeling that we would do this until we recorded the next album, kind of thing, because it wasn't really going to be an album. So we never really paid we didn't sweat about it. We just had fun. We just, there wasn't a lot of arguing, not too much anyway, not like usual.
Which kind of beer did you get? I hate that
And,
beer.
we let the sun kind of soak in, and while we were doing takes, people would be going for a swim and things like that. So it was a total surprise when people would say, wow, this is like, amazing, because it was something that just happened so easy and didn't really give it a second thought, and like I said, we were kind of doing that until we made our next record. So to think that it kind of ended up outselling our next record and became more popular, and it was a total shock to us.
Oh my, I can't help wondering why I do it again. I let you down. Watched your tears come splashing all around. All my life, I feel like I've been blind. But the moments that shine.
I was reading about before or after Nowhere to Hear, you took a break before you did this Tremolo.
Yeah.
And how come you say Nowhere to Hear? You all over it says it's a darker album. Why is that? I'm just curious about that. 5 Days in July was so light. So wintertime?
Wintertime, same farmhouse,
Was it really?
and we couldn't leave.
Wow.
We were kind of,
We're shut-ins.
we locked ourselves up for 6 weeks or so, and it wasn't the pleasant experience that it wasn't like a repeat of the summer. It was totally the opposite. It was like locked in a cabin
Wow.
and sequestered there for 6 weeks and just, fight, argue, I don't like this, I don't like that.
I'm glad you guys are normal. I'm making you out to be saints here.
And we got a record out of it, but I think that, and halfway through, Greg had an accident. We had to stop, and it actually was a good thing we stopped, I think, at the time, because we'd hit a brick wall or something. We were having a lot of trouble, and then we came back and finished it, and it didn't have the same spirit as 5 Days in July.
Do you guys, I don't know, this is personally, you have to answer me, but do you get winter depression like I do? When winter comes, it's like I'm
Yeah.
feeling it coming. I'm like, oh, it feels dark.
I do.
You know, it's like, so maybe that's what this album was.
It
Nowhere
was.
to hear.
It was definitely. It was just definitely the other side of it. Just even the subjects of the songs were just more.
Heavier.
Yeah, they were heavier and they were more questioning and more doubt in them. And then that's the way we approached it. We were certainly less clear on what we were doing. Well, I don't even think that you could get a consensus among the six of us what the record was actually like. I mean, I think that's, you have to do that too.
And at this point, there ain't much difference between leaving and left behind.
Time off is one thing. It's very good. Time off is obviously for us, since we have families, it's good to spend time with our family. But it was also, I think, time that we all went away and did other stuff. Basil played on a whole bunch of people's records. I made a solo record. Greg made a solo record and toured it. The drummer Glenn made a solo record. Kim made a
Wow.
solo record. James played on other records. So, it's, you know, you have to sort of experience more than just the one vehicle for music. Consequently, when we came back, it was much lighter attitude toward each other, and we were, you know, you have to appreciate being in a good band, but like being in a good family, you have to be with them all the time.
Yeah.
You start to resent all the little things.
Yeah, that's true.
This is not good, and this is not good. You need to play with other people, and you realize the good points and the bad points, and that's, you know, we've been a band for a long time, and we have to figure out, you know, how do you define yourself as you get into your 40s as a musician and a songwriter in a band? I think we've adapted musically